There are what you might call some rare old inhabitants in High Suffolk, and then there are some that are just rare. Sit by one of the many rivers at dusk, and then see what you might see. Look, an otter. They nearly disappeared, thanks to the intensification of farming. Once common, they came close to disappearing completely. Now, the otter didn't like what we were doing to its water. It didn't care for the pesticides, it didn't care for the fertilisers, and without doubt, the otter was on its way out. Until about 1970, when a most remarkable conservation experiment took place, and it happened right here, on the banks of the River Waveney. It was back in 1983, near Bungay, that the first releases of 3 otters into the wild took place. Mr Wayre was the pioneer behind this experimental idea.
We hope one day to establish the trust there and to build up a collection of the world's otters and to carry out research into their lives and habits, and with particular emphasis on breeding them in captivity.
Yes. At the time that you first started to take an interest in the otter, how rare had it become?
Well, it was on the slippery slope downhill then. That was in the 60s, you see. And by the 1970s, it was really pretty well extinct over most of Britain, actually.
Presumably you had to catch your first otter.
Yeah, well, that was quite easy, actually, no problem at all, because in those days, you see, back when I started in the 60s, there was a beast called the coypu. They were outlawed and they were being trapped, and I don't know, about several hundred trappers were employed in East Anglia, you see, and they used to set these big cage traps. Not baited, well, baited with carrots for coypu, but that wasn't what appealed to the otters. But otters, you see, are intensely curious, so they find a dirty great cage, and they look around to see if there's a way in, and having got in, of course, they couldn't get out. So I was able to buy otters, because they weren't protected in those days. They were normally shot and sold for £5 for their pelts. So I used to offer them £10 for the beast alive, and that's how I got my first otters all those years ago.
You saw the demise of the otter and decided to do something about it. What made you think that you could do something about it?
I don't know, I always felt that if you were breeding something successfully in captivity, and if it was native to the country in which you were breeding it, it should be possible to release it back into the wild, and provided there's enough food supply, and provided they got somewhere to rest and lie up without being too disturbed, I was pretty sure they'd survive.
Now, what did happen to those early otters?
Well, we know they were certainly bred successfully, because the bitches were seen with cubs. They bred the following year, actually. It was on the Blackbourne in High Suffolk, where this first release took place. And that really was a bit of a surprise, you know.
How many otters do you think there are now in Suffolk, which are there because of what you did back in the 70s?
All the ones in Suffolk are there virtually certainly as a result of the reintroduction programme. There wouldn't be any without, I don't think.
Did you ever imagine it would be as successful as it has been?
No. Hoped it would be. Hoped it would be, but I didn't really think it would be, no. And we took a certain smug satisfaction, you know. There were all those people who said, oh, of course it won't work, the damn things will die. I mean, they're not going to survive, are they? Bred in captivity, you turn them out on that marsh, they're not going to live. Well, they did, and they bred. So we enjoyed that.